Yiratzon, Parashat Vaera, 5780. Yiratzon the limud shebeder refuat kol hacholim. V'tocham Tanya v'tocham Margalit, Yosef Yair ben Aviv Achava, Harav Sivan ben Sima, v'toch kol shachol Israel. This parsha, we read 7 out of 10 of the Makot. And it's very, very important to recognize that there's something else going on except for the Makot. If we look in the story of the exile to Egypt and the redemption from Egypt, we'll find something that's emphasized and needs to be understood. In Perek Aleph in Sefer Shemot, when exile begins, it begins with Paro throwing the children into the Nile. And he uses the water that could have been the sign of life to be the sign of death. He transforms what could have been what enables life to become what disables life. That's where exile begins. In that same Nile is where it becomes Moshe's ability to survive. The same Nile that Paro chose to become the beginning of death was the same Nile that enabled Moshe's survival. When we look in the first Makkah, it's not random. For some reason, that same water that could have been the vitality and the life of Egypt becomes blood, becomes death. And at the end in Parshat B'Shalach, in Perek Yudalid, in Kriyat Yamsuf, again, we go back to water. And the same water that could have been life or death becomes death for Egypt and becomes the sign of life for the Jewish people. And so throughout the story of Mitzrayim, we see this concept of the water becoming either the death penalty or becoming the life cord or the survival cord. And so the question we ask ourselves, going into Parshat Vaera, seeing the first Makkah being the water becomes blood, and seeing this concept within the story of the exile and redemption, that the water becomes the central message. How is it that the same water can be how Paro decided to kill, and where Moshe became life, where blood became water and water became what saved the Jews? Why is this water so central? Because it gives us the difference between Egypt and the Jewish people. When you look at the water on a surface level, it's something that can bring the ending for life. Paro says, I don't want anyone to see beyond. I want to use the Nile, I want to use the water to teach people that there's nothing more than what you see. Paro's educational message in Mitzrayim is Yishu ba'avodah ve'al yishu b'divrei sheker. I want you to work and then work and then work and then work. There's nothing more and there's nothing else that's going to change. The change is not an option. You were born a slave and you're going to die a slave. And in this world that Paro wants to represent, water is what I bring in to show you that nothing will change. It's the ending. It's not the beginning. I take a child that's starting and I throw it into the water to show that the water is the end. There is no secrets. There's no future. Comes Hashem against Paro and says, I want to show you in the first Makkah what you have done. You have made the water into blood. You have made the water into the ends. But that same water can also be the opposite. It can be the beginning. You can pour water onto a seed and suddenly you'll have a new world that you never knew of. And the whole story of redemption is not that you're redeemed, but that you understand the definition of redemption. The definition of redemption is that you believe in water. Is that you believe that something that might be looking like nothing, a Jew walking around the street that doesn't even look like a redeemer, Moshe looked like an Egyptian. Like he was just a little seed. You pour water onto it, and it could become Moshe Rabbeinu. You pour water onto it, and Moshe, in that same Nile that saw the water as the beginning, became the definition of redemption. And so water is the exact antithesis between Mitzrayim and the Jews. Mitzrayim present the water as blood, and that's the ending. We present water as the idea of there is something that's not seen, and we have to believe in it. When you look at a child, it's just a child. But a child that has someone that puts effort into it is going to become Rav Kook, is going to become Moshe Rabbeinu. Because it's not a question of who you are, it's a question of who believes in you. And that's what water is. And that's what redemption is. And so when we walk into Parshat Vaera and we realize that water is such a centerpiece in the redemption, we have to ask ourselves, how do we see water? Do we see it as the ends? And then we're going to end up like Mitzrayim. We're not going to use the water and pour it onto someone. Pour it onto a seed. Create, build. And if we do this, we're going to end up in exile. But if we use the water to pour it onto things that are lost, that are broken, but that all they need is just a little bit of a feeling of it's just the beginning. You're not the end. You're the startup of the Jewish people. You're not the ending. You're atchalta de geula. You're not the ending of exile. You're the beginning of redemption. And that's going to be seen through how you treat water. Is it something that you pour on something when it's finished and then it's over? Or do you pour it at the beginning and then it's a startup and then it's redemption? And that's what will enable us to enter into the story of Geula. Shabbat Shalom.